Hey everybody, welcome back to Pro AV Today. I am your host, Ben Thomas. One of the things that's on everybody's mind right now in the AV world is the idea of immersive audio and immersive audio environments. Obviously, you look at projects like the Sphere and they've totally changed how we've thought about audio, how folks have come to experience audio. So I wanted to bring on a couple folks today, not only to talk about that project, but talk about what that means for our industry, not only from a design and application standpoint, but from an actual hands-on standpoint. So the two folks I brought on today are folks from Holoplot, the team who provided and built the speaker system at the Sphere. And that's Michael Kastner and Ryan Penny. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Ben.
Well, Michael, want to ask first, I think you've had an opportunity to actually be inside the Sphere for one of the shows. I've got to ask, look, I haven't had a chance to go yet, but how is it? What is the audio even like? Obviously, the visuals are incredible, but what does the audio sound like?
Yeah, I mean, unlike anything I ever experienced before, I would say. You're sitting in this massive venue, and then you're experiencing Bono, who is like standing away a long way, and I still hear him like here. So it's from that perspective, something that while we have been working on this for a long time, of course, and working towards that, you really only then believe it when you're sitting in there and you experience it and the people around you experience it.
Well, and Ryan, I need to ask, right? I mean, obviously you think about a gigantic spherical venue that sounds like an acoustical nightmare, but what are some of the ways that you helped overcome some of those challenges just from a system design standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. Having a spherical venue is a challenge. We've done a lot of work in domes and spheres with our technology, but it's even more of a challenge when there's the LED media plane involved as well with that. Having a very large LED, which is obviously a somewhat hard reflective surface, causes challenges from reflections and echoes. And also just because of the distances involved at the Sphere particularly, the viewing distance to that LED and the size of the arena for 20,000, up to 20,000 fans means we're talking about very, very long distances. So a lot of the work that we've done is to be able to control sound over those distances, first of all, and to overcome some of the challenges around the loss of energy over distance. But also to then be able to direct that sound more towards the audience to, exactly as Michael was saying, be able to give this sense of real presence to the artist. So rather than having this experience that you feel quite detached from, having an experience that you feel really part of, and that the sound is a massive part of that experience as well, in making you feel included in the gig rather than an observer.
Well, and Michael, I want to ask too, right? I mentioned it. We're not going to spend a ton of time on the Sphere, so we're going to take what we've learned from the Sphere and apply it to our collective audio industry as a whole, right? When you look at a project like that, it opens up all sorts of ideas and applications, right? Not only surround sound, but obviously audio beaming, haptic technology, in-seat sound. There's this whole new world of audio that we're exploring at scale in our community. But, when you think about immersive audio, what are some of the applications maybe that we haven't thought about yet? Obviously, from a venue standpoint, we're seeing that. But what are some of the other places that you're seeing immersive audio technologies roll out?
It's a really, really good question. And I actually would like to start with talking a little bit about the term of immersive audio, because I think it becomes more and more some kind of diluted term, and it requires a redefinition. For some people, immersive audio means it's surround sound. For other people, it means something completely different. I think we shouldn't attach this term to a specific application and rather take it by its essential meaning. Does the person in the audience feel immersed? And what does it actually take for that person to feel that? From my perspective, two things. One, it needs to feel true to them. Right? So what I see is what I hear, and there's no mismatch. And also the audio system is not disturbing the visuals, which is very important, for example, in the Sphere, but also in a lot of other projects that we're doing. And the other aspect is how intimate does it feel, right? So is there a perception of distance? And in this case, it doesn't necessarily mean far or close, but just it's a conscious choice. And in the case of Sphere, it means it feels very close, even though the person on the stage is like 110 meters away, which is a massive distance. And if we take this definition of immersive audio, meaning the person feels immersed in the application, then I think we see a lot of different applications as well. We see on the one hand things like the sphere, which a lot of people in the first stage wouldn't look at something immersive because it's stage focused, and for a lot of people immersive means distributed surround sound, but actually that is an immersive stage focused experience. But then on the other hand, of course, we also have what we would call experiential experiences or applications where it's not stage focused. You walk around, and while you walk around, you go on a journey and you experience something while you're moving through the venue.
Well, absolutely. And you talk about, obviously, all sorts of different applications. Staying in Vegas, there's places like the Illuminarium where you can experience a lot of that technology as well, right? But there are also immersive experiences where you can have headphones on in all sorts of different ways. So I appreciate you kind of clarifying that. But Ryan, I wanted to ask, right, when you think about, this technology, and I want to kind of focus just for a second on the Holoplot technology, right? Because you guys have really embraced the idea of non-traditional box and speaker design and mounting technologies in all sorts of different ways. And I think it's really revolutionized a lot of the ways that folks have thought about traditional audio systems, right? When you think about venues specifically, okay, you've got your dead hang PA systems, your stereo systems, and then your subs. Sometimes you're going to fly them, sometimes you're not. But when you think about, the Holoplot ecosystem specifically, that opens up a lot of different doors from a mounting and placement perspective. What are some of the ways that you're now seeing these speakers being placed to help drive a lot of these immersive and experiential experiences?
Yeah, it's something that we're learning as well as creatives get hands on the technology and do even more with it. Every time we see a new application, we learn a new way to use our system, which is something you don't experience with a traditional stereo PA system. The position of that is kind of fixed to a large extent by the physics. And we try and uncouple that to as large a degree as we can to give the most flexibility for the creative to build the experience they want to build, despite many of the challenges. So if you have a space with 360-degree projection, or you have a space with LED, or you have a physical space with physical objects or things you need to interact with, how can we position the sound system within that space? But more importantly, how can we then deliver the sound to the audience member that the creative wants to build, or the soundscape that they want to create in that space? So we've seen our system used both in what we essentially call the kind of large central array, which allows you to do a lot of steering, and as Michael was talking about with respect to the sphere and creating stage localization, that's very important. We also then expand that up to traditional stereo systems where absolutely you can use our system in a stereo configuration, and there are benefits to having the technology of being able to control in the horizontal when you talk about a stereo image as well. The ability to overcome level loss over a stereo field in the horizontal plane means a wider sweet spot. It means more people experiencing stereo. And then as you expand that out and you add additional positions, for example, start moving the loudspeakers out to the sides and integrating them fully into projection surfaces, integrating them to LED elements and things like that, you can create very interesting effects where you can create stereo, for example, but you can create stereo over a much larger area because of this overcoming the level drop over distance. Because as we get closer to that loudspeaker, we're not overwhelmed by sound. The one unique experience that most people feel with our system is as you get closer to the X1 that's behind me right now, you're not met with this enormous amount of sound energy that then dissipates very quickly as you walk away. And what that means is you get a great deal more flexibility in that positioning element of that. Even when we go large, so very large spaces, being able to place the speakers much further away than we traditionally would be able to. And that's powered because with the 3D beamforming, we can restrict that space and really direct that energy over that large distance. Whereas with most traditional loudspeakers, we're talking about maybe one or two fixed dispersion angles, which means that sound quickly excites the room rather than the person that's listening.
Yeah, if I might just add to this, I think it's about, the first step, it's about doing the basics better. Right, so keeping the energy away from where it shouldn't go and making sure that the people in the audience have a homogeneous experience, avoiding unwanted reflections, avoiding audible echoes. And once you have created that more functional canvas, I would say, then you can start adding more unique creative capabilities that Holoplot technology would bring. But it all starts with first overcoming the challenges that a challenging room acoustics brings, and then you can work with that.
Well, Michael, to follow up on that too, I'll use the Illuminarium as an example, right? The speakers are actually mounted behind the screens, right? Which is not uncommon, right? But it's non-traditional to have an impeded audio signal. But one of the cool things that I've noticed is that, technology like this, specifically kind of the beamforming in technology, is that it allows the physical space to look and feel and be a lot different than maybe a traditional installation, right? And I'll kind of step back with this. There's a lot more intentionality built into these physical spaces where audio is concerned, right? Because it used to be, hey, we're going to build a sanctuary, we're going to build a venue, and we care more about the aesthetics of the venue, and we're going to hang a PA system, and that'll be great. But now you're able to actually build the audio system itself into the architecture, into all sorts of different placement. What are some of the things now with maybe a smaller form factor that you're able to create in a physical space versus maybe those traditional PA hung systems?
Yeah, I would first want to say that I think it's really this level of hiding the loudspeaker is very important because it always creates a problem for the visuals. So we have this in many of our projects, that our loudspeaker is actually behind an LED screen or behind a projection screen, and we are algorithmically compensating for the transmission loss that this creates, which is also unique to our technology. Through that you achieve that kind of level of immersion that you couldn't achieve before. And you can't look at the visual without thinking about that there is no loudspeaker visible. And that's also very important why the Sphere is such a success, because it's a holistic experience. And that's also how we in general approach things, not as a audio siloed approach, but actually thinking holistically across different AV disciplines, because it's always about the complete experience and not just one or the other.
And Ryan, I want to ask the same question to you, right? Being a little bit more on the project management side, how important is that physical space, right? You don't get to walk into, as much as we want to, you don't get to do a new build in every single venue, right? That would be amazing and perfect if we did. But take kind of that perspective and apply it to the retrofit side, right? There are a lot of existing spaces that could leverage this technology. I'm thinking churches, I'm thinking even museums, I'm thinking places like the Illuminarium that are these experiential entertainment worlds. How can you take this technology and apply it to a physical retrofit as well?
Yeah, it's something that we've had experience with in museum facilities and also in venues as well, going into old venues that have notorious acoustic challenges, such as reflections from certain surfaces that just can't be overcome, certain glass balustrades or roof structures, etc. So I think what's really interesting from a technology point is that we come at this from a real technology innovation point of view, which is by using software to control a loudspeaker, building this software-defined loudspeaker that we have with X1 and our future products, that through that technology, we can alleviate some of the challenges of integration. So if you don't need to put in as many positions for speakers, or if those positions are easier to access or more integrated into the space, that's a cost saving for the project overall. And that cost saving can then go into making this holistic experience and also investing in the technology side. So we're solving those challenges through technology rather than just having to integrate more cable tray and more cabling and all the other things that we have to do as audio system installers, which is often work that doesn't go towards an audio system, it's just enabling work. So what we've seen in the retrofit environment is, as Michael was saying, integrating and covering our system with very advanced sort of matched, like material matched panels and things like that has become very common for us and something that we're specialized in because of the unique capabilities. And when it comes down to the steering side, when you think about steering in a traditional sense, or what we're all familiar with from concerts, is arrays that curve. And those curved arrays allow that steering to happen. But unfortunately, that curve also means that it's impossible to achieve good results behind a material, because as that curve comes away from the back of that usually flat material, it creates diffraction off the back of the material, which means that the sound does not actually go through, because the surface appears more opaque to the sound than when it's directly perpendicular. By having a flat array of drivers and using our software algorithms to do the steering in a three-dimensional sense, we overcome that. And so that's why bringing that loudspeaker towards that surface, whatever it is, and integrating that into the surface of a room or any kind of space, whether it's an LED in the sphere, where exactly like that, we follow the curvature of the back of the LED, or whether it's a panel that's matched to look like marble or a different surface. We can steer through all of those and still offer that control of the sound propagation in the space. So combining those two things has been a massive part of the journey we've been on recently, and is a common demand from our customers.
Well, that's a great point. And to kind of follow up on that too, Michael, I think it's easy to live in a world where you're thinking on the creative, the design side, the application side, the software side. But at the end of the day, there typically is an audio engineer, especially in the live environment, that has to operate a lot of this technology. And I know a lot of folks have been asking questions. Okay, not only how do I better create better coverage in a better tuned room, but okay, how do I step that up, right? How do I create a level of immersion, or where someone might hard pan something in the past, you now have an option to sort of put it in different places in the room, into different sections of the venue. What are some of the opportunities from an audio engineering standpoint that this opens up?
Yeah, as you just mentioned, right, you gain a lot of flexibility in what you can do, and you can overcome challenges that so far weren't really possible to overcome with conventional technology. I actually would like to highlight one project that we had in London with Lightroom, where the challenge was that you just couldn't put a loudspeaker where you wanted to have the sound coming from, so we used a reflection. So we are pointing the beam towards that spot and then making it sound like there is a loudspeaker. And that is something that simply wasn't possible before. But as Ryan mentioned before, I think what's possible overall creatively with the system is something that needs to be explored. We are only very beginning of what you can do. We sometimes look at our system and we say, actually, now we are at the level of instrument already. You can manipulate sound, you can do things with sound, from creating zones to creating very focused beams, to creating very wide beams, to creating virtual sources that make it sound like there's an object, but there's a loudspeaker, but there isn't actually one. That's all part of the new palette of creative tools that audio engineers can use to create something that hasn't been seen and heard before.
Well, Ryan, I want to ask you the same question, right? There's so many different applications and opportunities. What are some of the things that this opens up for the audio engineering side?
I think if we just talk about engineers and what most people do on from a live music perspective, for example, I think, first of all, it should be said that our system behaves just like a normal PA system if that's what you want it to do. You don't really need to learn any real special skills in order to use it, and it isn't super complicated. So once you decide what you want that array to be and to do, you just drive it like you're driving a PA system, right? You take your mixing desk, you plug it in, use a standard like network or protocol or whatever flavor of audio you want to get, and you can play that PA system, and you can mix your show. But on top of that, then you have some different things like the experience of not needing to mix so hot where you are to deal with the fact that at the back people will need to hear it. So actually sort of changing that is a learned experience for engineers to go and say, actually, I can mix at a really pleasant level for me as the engineer sat in a great seat, and everyone can have that same experience, is something that people have to adapt to as an engineer and get used to. And we've already seen that happening at the Sphere and other venues like in Marbella in Spain, where we have a festival that's used our system this summer. throughout the whole 3-month summer festival period that they ran. Different engineers coming in, experiencing the system. So there's a learning curve, but it's really quite intuitive, and it's just about learning some of those basic differences between our system and anything else. And it's exactly like going from using a standard point source system to a line array and learning that difference, and then doing the same from a line array to a matrix array for us. And then really, I think we're exploring, or engineers have been exploring, how to use that in a live context with respect to covering the venues in different ways. There's different ways in which they can do that, different techniques and different positions they can choose, just like any other PA system. And whilst for maybe line array, there's sort of hard rules of thumb that people have learned over 25 years of line array use, people now are experimenting with ours, and I think that brings excitement for most of them. And certainly for our team, it brings excitement to see what people want to do with it, try different things out and see where the technology, where the edges are, where we can push it, and what we'll develop.
I think I would like to add and really emphasize this point that from a workflow perspective, we obviously try to make it as easy as possible to adapt to working with our system, to a point where if you have, for example, configured the system in 2 or 3 ways, and I think that's important to understand that when we are talking about the configuration of a system, we're now talking about beams, right? We're creating a completely new sound field configuration in the room. We're changing the whole system, but that is actually something that you can do very quickly. So if you have a, let's say, concert mode, or you have a immersive movie mode, like in the Sphere, that's just in the end a button click, because it has been prepared already, and you just load this preset.
Well, and I want to ask Ryan one follow-up question. I appreciate that that last thought, Michael. Ryan, one question on that is, does a system like this tour well? Can you take it on tour?
So certainly the technology is tourable. Our technology right now is manifested in the X1 products. The X2 products is coming for a different market, which is more focused on the installation market. The future for us is to diversify where we apply that technology. The X1 is for indoor use. So from that point of view, if you're doing outdoor touring in like Red Rocks and things like that, it's probably not exactly for you. But certainly it can be used in a live context, and we're doing live concerts with the system regularly, particularly things like special events, corporate events, theatre shows, all of those different things. But no, it wasn't really designed from the ground up as a live touring box, which, let's face it, most of those are concerned right now on truck pack and those kind of things. We've still got that development to come ahead of us, but the actual technology has huge advantages in that context, particularly if you look at the challenges that most touring engineers have over getting the rigging in the right place of the different venues they have and adapting to that. And also things like reflections from scoreboards, or reflections from, as I said, the fronts of the suites and the sky suites and all the other things in hospitality spaces in an arena. There's major benefits to be able to beam steer away from those and actually be able to do it on the fly with software, rather than have to send your riggers up to your PA and do any adjustments or drop the PA, etc. So from our point of view, we see the future as being a software-controlled PA system for all applications, not just immersive applications. But right now, no, it's not the solution for all touring around the world, but perhaps it could be in the short future.
Well, I appreciate the candor, and with the future in mind, Michael, I want to give you the last question here. What is the future of immersive audio, right? That is a wildly umbrella term that can mean a lot of different things. I know that you mentioned that earlier, but what would you say is the future, not only for the great technology that you guys have, but for immersive experiences?
Yeah, I think taking this word immersion and bringing it into all kinds of spaces, be it what we call an experiential venue, such as Illuminarium, but also into something like the Sphere, where we're now all of a sudden talking about an immersive, stage-focused experience. But then also, as you mentioned before, immersion in a mosque or a church, where it's about creating very meaningful experiences through better sound.
Look, that's a great way to end the conversation. I appreciate the both of you jumping in and having this discussion with me today. I feel like it's probably the first of many conversations that we'll have, because the technology is constantly improving and the applications are constantly changing. I love to see some of the ways that folks have leveraged this immersive technology to really change their entire venues and their entire experiences. So I appreciate the both of you coming on today. We hope to have you on again soon.
Thanks,
Thank
Ben.
you, Tom.
And thank you, the viewer, for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe and join us again next time for Pro AV Today.